This is Orlando Sentinel Now.
Hello, it's Tuesday, November 9th. Rich Pope here with Steve Lemongello and Scott Maxwell. Topics today we're going to touch on Governor DeSantis pushing back against the Biden administration for vaccination mandates. Also, we're going to look at the Florida marijuana industry and some glaring issues with that one. We'll dive into that one in a moment, but we'll start here with Steve Lemongello. Yesterday, Governor DeSantis made it known what he intended to do with the legislation session as far as pushing back against mandates from the federal government on vaccinations.
Nobody, no cop, no firefighter, no nurse, nobody should be losing their jobs because of these jabs. We have got to stand up for people and protect their jobs and protect their livelihoods. I called a special session of the legislature to be able to address this because we need to protect Floridians. We need to make sure that people can put food on the table and that their livelihoods aren't dependent on whether or not they do the jab or the booster or whatever may come down the pike.
Steve, how's it look?
Sure. So this comes, DeSantis called the special session next week. Apparently the bans against vaccine passports did not go far enough for DeSantis' liking because there was still a legal question. Okay, does the vaccine passports, prevent businesses and governments from, having vaccine requirements for customers or people using government services? Does it really ban, mandates for employees? So he's coming back. He's going to be pushing for a ban against vaccine mandates for local governments, or at least some of the bills. There's a bunch of different bills being filed here. There's also a bill to ban vaccine mandates by businesses. And again, that's also sort of tricky. There's a lot of constitutional question, like, can a state government, ban these things for businesses, because the federal government's doing it under its sort of OSHA capacity, because any business of over 100 people falls under that sort of, bailiwick. But what is being proposed so far doesn't really appear to be actually any different than the business mandate for vaccines from the federal government. It's banned, but it's banned for any companies that don't exempt employees for medical or religious reasons, or if they have a prior COVID-19 infection, or if an employee agrees to regular COVID-19 testing and they're wearing protective equipment such as a mask. All these exemptions are already in the federal OSHA mandate. So essentially, it's basically very similar, despite DeSantis couching this as Florida fighting for freedom against the federal government.
We're going to be saving a lot of jobs in the state of Florida. We're going to be striking a blow for freedom. We're going to be standing up against the Biden mandates, and we're going to be better as a result of it.
Yeah, it seemed like another thing that he had wanted to get in on this is also protection from for individuals that, say, lost their job for legal fees. It seems like that was left out as well.
DeSantis talked a lot last week about, stripping liability protections for businesses that were put on specifically back in, earlier this year's session, that gave a lot of protections for businesses, for COVID-19, a lot of liability protections. He had talked last week or a few weeks ago about stripping those, essentially a stab in the back for businesses to then, impose a vaccine mandate while Florida's government is doing all they can to protect them from lawsuits. But that stripping does not seem to be really in here so far. You can never know. There's always amendments that are popped onto things, but those usually take a while. And again, he has a week. So yeah, a lot weaker in terms of the bans against businesses imposing vaccine mandates than originally thought. There is also, essentially, it would create unemployment benefits for people fired for refusing to take the vaccine. This is sort of ironic, as DeSantis and Republicans were very insistent that the federal unemployment benefits, as part of the federal COVID legislation, needed to end as soon as possible, to get people back into the job market. And there's still a lot of issues with the unemployment system, as is in the state. But this will be creating a new group of people eligible for unemployment benefits. But so far, just people fired for refusing to take the vaccine, as essentially that will get you unemployment benefits, according to one of the new bills being proposed.
Right. It seems like another thing on the table here, it seems like this move towards removing Florida from OSHA, essentially this feeling from legislators that it's being used as essentially a weapon against the state of Florida.
Yeah, this would be long and very bitter if that happens. One of the bills would order DeSantis' office to develop a plan and set aside $1 million for the project. Florida would essentially have to create its own workplace safety enforcement agency, which would have to be then approved by OSHA. So this is not happening anytime soon. DeSantis and the Republicans essentially would be making a statement saying, if you keep doing this, we'll just pull out and create our own, safety agency for Florida businesses. I mean, how strict such an agency would be, for Florida Republicans are very, very business friendly, so it's quite questionable how strict in terms of worker safety such a thing would be, even if and when it's ever created, which again would take years and years and years.
Ultimately, when will this all take place? Is a special session taking place?
Special session starts next Monday on the 15th and lasts for about 5 days, essentially Monday, Friday. So all of this has to be done then because DeSantis essentially decided that the need to prevent businesses from having vaccine mandates was so urgent that he could not wait until January to do this.
All right, updates on OrlandoSentinel.com right now for the special session coming ahead, too. All right, guys, we're going to move forward here to Scott Maxwell. And Scott, we're going to go to the medical marijuana business here in Florida. A real glaring problem. Scott, what's going on?
Yeah, we have written a lot about the medical marijuana industry. And this past weekend, reporter Skylar Swisher did an interesting piece on how, despite the fact that there have been 22 licenses handed out in the state of Florida for people to get in, to cash in basically on what they're calling the green rush, $1 billion industry, not a single one, that's zero, has gone to any black farmers who are growing it or black business people in general. And I think that points to well, I think everybody can agree that points to a significant discrepancy. But I think a bigger point that I'm wanting to stress is that it is a problem for black farmers, but really there are a lot of people who are getting shut out, and the people who are cashing in are the people who are connected to Florida's politicians.
Right. Let's get into that as well, because you've reported on this. You've done columns on it. Nikki Fried, earlier in the year, her connections to lobbyists and her connections to the medical marijuana industry, and this is concerning in itself.
Yeah, there are a lot of them, and our staff has written a number of stories. As you mentioned, Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried used to be a lobbyist for the marijuana industry. She had, according to her last disclosure, $130,000 stake in a company which was recently acquired by Trulieve. And Trulieve has been granted one of those lucrative 22 licenses, and Trulieve now controls 40% of Florida's medical marijuana market. Trulieve also happened to be founded by the brother of Florida's former Secretary of Business and Professional Regulation, who was also a state representative. We've written about lots of other things, about Matt Gaetz, who helped craft marijuana legislation. His friends cashed in, and we even had one story about an Orlando hand doctor, Dr. Jason Pirazzolo, who one company out of a Canadian company said Pirazzolo told them that in order to get in on the business in Florida, they needed to cut a campaign check to Gaetz. I think, if memory serves, they didn't, and they didn't get a license. But we've had a lot of these stories about companies sort of either close to Florida politicians or politically connected getting licenses, while sort of rank and file people are not.
Right. And you would wonder, even in a state that's controlled by a Republican legislator, that they would support a free market. This does not seem to be a free market at all.
This is the furthest thing you could possibly get from a free market. And other states have done it differently. For instance, in Florida, you have to pay about $140,000 fee to even apply to get one of these licenses. And the state has only granted 22 of them. In Oklahoma, the fee is $2,500, and they have granted 12,000 licenses in Oklahoma. That would be, still not a free market, because the licenses still have to be granted, and there's something to be said for regulation in terms of safety. But Florida has about the furthest thing you can get from a free market. And some of the black farmers are correctly noting that even if they get let in to this market long after this green rush started, keep in mind, the Floridians approved this in 2016. They're way behind. Folks like Trulieve are already cashing in big time. Anybody who gets in is getting in late.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. And you make the point that Florida politicians have continued to drag their feet on this issue.
We've been talking about it for a long time, but as 71% of Floridians approved this in 2016, you would have thought there would have been implementing legislation right afterwards. That did not happen. They dragged their feet. They had to be forced. The governor, to his credit, forced the legislators to take some action. One other thing I thought I would mention, this is usually what happens when a government, I shouldn't say any government, Florida wants to try to control sort of the sin vices. We also have this in alcohol. It's really strictly regulated. You hear small-time craft brewers say the system is tilted against them, that it's meant to benefit the big guys who often have the lobbying force in this. And I think, to your point, if we're in favor of free markets and if we're in favor of entrepreneurship, of small businesses, you would want something very different from what we have here, which seems to benefit a lot of those who are connected to the politicians.
All right. Well, there's wise words from Scott Maxwell there. You can go ahead and take a look at his column. Keep an eye on OrlandoSentinel.com for that. Of course, he's got many more up there right now. But we're going to go ahead and call it quits for today. Appreciate you all being with us. Want to point out, though, become a subscriber. Go to OrlandoSentinel.com/subscribe and support our work. We always do appreciate that. But for us, we're going to call it quits. Until next time, I'm Rich, Steve, Scott. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Watch Orlando Sentinel Now live every weekday at noon on our Facebook page and on OrlandoSentinel.com.